All right, let's take a look at the directed reading A for Chapter 3, Section 1 on what is climate. So number 1 is A. Weather conditions include temperature and precipitation. 2. The average weather condition in an area over a long period of time is climate. Um, there's a big part of our studies is going to be the difference between the climate and the weather. So the weather is like the day-to-day temperature, precipitation, wind, air pressure, but the climate is more of a long-term thing. It's the weather condition over a longer period of time. For 3, the two main factors in climate are the temperature and the precipitation. So we talk about, what are the temperature trends for an area? What are the precipitation trends for an area? Now, there are 5 main factors that affect the climate of an area. So the first one is latitude. What does latitude measure? It's the distance north or south in degrees from the equator. So the further you are from the equator, the higher the latitude. And now how latitude affects temperatures at the poles. The higher the latitude is, the colder the climate tends to be. So the further you get away from the equator, the colder the climate is typically going to be. 6. During June and July, why is it summer in the northern hemisphere and winter in the southern hemisphere? Because the Earth is tilted. Has a big effect on our weather, is the fact that the Earth is tilted on its axis. So I wrote, during June and July, the northern hemisphere tilts towards the sun and receives more direct solar energy for a longer time. The southern hemisphere tilts away from the sun, so it has colder temperatures and shorter days. So, like during our summers, June, July, August, we live in the northern hemisphere and we're tilted towards the sun, so we get more direct rays of light from the sun. During our winter months, December, January, February, the northern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun, so we get less direct light, and that keeps us cold in the wintertime. 7. Prevailing winds. They're another factor that causes the climate. Winds that blow mainly from one direction are prevailing winds. 8. When warm air rises, it cools. That's what we talk a lot about, that warm air rises, rising and cooling. This causes it to lose the ability to hold water, which creates precipitation. So the hot air rises. When it cools at the top of the atmosphere, the top of the troposphere, it drops its precipitation. 9. Winds that travel across large bodies of water tend to be moist. So as they go across the water, they pick up moisture. And the ones that travel across the land are dry. And what may cause a land region to be dry even though it's near the ocean? If a dry prevailing wind can cause land near an ocean to be dry. So if the air is coming across the land, it's going to be dry air. And even if it goes all the way up to the ocean or large body of water, that could still cause the land to be dry. Mountains are another factor for climate. The height of landforms such as mountains above sea level is called elevation. And 12, why is the temperature at the top of a mountain cooler than at the bottom of the mountain? Because mountains force the air to rise, and then the air cools as it rises. So here's a little mountain here. So as the air goes up the mountain, hot air starts down here, but as it goes up the mountain, it's going to cool. So the tops of the mountains are going to be colder. 13. Now this is an important part of climate. The question, explain why the land on the windward side of the mountain range is usually green and lush while the other side is usually dry. So this is the windward side because the wind is coming from this side. So as air rises up a mountain, it cools. As it cools, it releases moisture as precipitation, creating lush vegetation. After dry air crosses to the other side of the mountain, it sinks and warms up, holding moisture. So it happens a lot that on the windward side of a mountain, there's a lot of plants and trees and rain on this side, and then the other side of the mountain is dry. So the windward side of the mountain is is more lush. So the climate on this side of the mountain is going to be different than the climate on this side of the mountain. Large bodies of water have a big effect on climate. So 14, why do areas near large bodies of water rarely have sudden or extreme temperature changes? And the answer is water absorbs and releases heat more slowly than land does, so it moderates temperatures of surrounding land. Like a country like England, even though it's really a pretty high northern latitude, it's very far away from the equator, so you'd expect it to be really cold. But it's surrounded by water, and it gets so its temperatures, its climate is moderate, which means kind of like not too hot, not too cold. A lot of Seattle, Washington is another place that you'd expect it to be much colder, but since it's right next to the ocean, it has a very moderate climate. Ocean currents having a big effect on climate. Stream-like movements of water at or near the surface of the ocean are surface currents. So the ocean, there's kind of like rivers that flow through the ocean, and we call those ocean currents. 16, why does southern Iceland have milder temperatures than Greenland, its neighbor? So warm water from the Gulf Stream flows past Iceland, heating the air and raising temperatures. So the water that is flowing from the Gulf of Mexico, it's warm water, and it flows all the way north. And as it flows past the southern part of Iceland, it brings warm temperatures, warm climate to Iceland. But Greenland doesn't get those warm Gulf Stream surface currents, so it stays really cold. 17, temperature range of each major climate zone relates to its latitude. 18, a large region characterized by a specific type of climate and certain types of plant and animal communities are called biomes. Biomes. I think you guys should recognize the word part bio. Why are there several types of climates within each of the 3 major climate zones? There are several types of climates because of differences in geography and the amount of precipitation. So latitude is the main factor for these biomes. But within each latitude, there could be oceans, there could be large bodies of water, there could be mountains, there could be prevailing winds going in different directions. So there's a bunch of different types of biomes within each latitude. All right, that's directed reading A. Make sure you get all the corrections, and then you'll have to turn that in as well.